Well, hello. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining me. This is the ultimate guide to talk show interviews with me, Brian Kelsey. And if you're here, then you are interested in learning the art of interviewing somebody on your talk show. And we're going to go over that, of course, but we're going to go over other things that you may not think about that other people really don't talk about. So let's jump right in and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So, the art of question crafting. Now, when you're getting ready to interview somebody, there's so many things to think about. And this is one of the first things. And it's the type of questions that you ask. Okay, you don't want to, it's rule number one, really. It's basic 101 is you don't want to ask a yes or no question, right? You don't want to say, what did you have for dinner tonight? Oh, well, I had, grilled cheese. No, what you want to ask is, how did eating dinner tonight make you feel? That's more of a question where they can expand on. They can't just answer yes or no. It's very important that all of your questions are like that. Now, you might ask, in the midst of the interview, a yes/no question, but that should be part of an earlier question. So maybe you're talking and they expound on something and then you just quickly follow up with well, did you like that? Or, how was it? That's totally fine. But really the main questions should not be questions with a yes or no answer. And we're going to start broad and dig deeper. So just start with bigger questions, bigger themes, and then we'll gradually kind of drill down further. Now, you also want to create backup questions for when conversations stall. So inevitably, you're going to get a guest who really maybe not really comfortable on camera, doesn't really want to talk so much, but they're there to promote something, of course. But they're just not good at it. So you need to make sure that you have a whole bunch of questions. Now, you may only get to one question, in the perfect world, because you'll just lead to all these different conversations. But you want to have at least 5 or 6 questions, depending on how long your show is, that cover everything. So that if they start to, they're a little hesitant, you can kind of just keep going down the list. And, we're going to talk about making them feel comfortable, which is really important in a little bit. But again, just be prepared with a lot of questions. One of the things I like to do is design questions that elicit stories rather than facts. So, how was that trip? Tell me about what that experience was like for you. Not just necessarily, hey, when you went on that trip, how was it? No, you want to draw out how they felt, the experience, the emotions. All that stuff makes for great interviews. And of course, you want to craft connector questions. So you might have different topics, and you want to make sure that you seamlessly go from one to the other. And that all depends on the person and the interview and the type of show you have, but it's definitely something to think about how you're going to bridge these things together. Now, the technical setup. Well, don't get stressed over the technicalities of your setup. They're just some things you really need to think about, okay? And I'm not going to go too deep in here, but I thought it was really worth mentioning. It does help to have multiple camera angles, because that will help you in your edit if things come up like where, the guest is either really nervous or, they do an answer and they want to redo it or something like that. Or maybe, a car goes by and honks its horn and you want to edit that out. Having multiple cameras helps you. But you still could get away with having one 4K camera, right? So we're going to export our final interview show in 1080. If we shoot in 4K, we can crop in and out to each of us. So if you just want to focus in on the guest, you can push in on just that person. Or if you just want to push in on you, asking a question, you do have that opportunity. But again, having 2 cameras, dedicated cameras, really, really helps. Of course, microphones are so important, more important than the camera, because without audio, you've got nothing. And if your show has really bad audio, that immediately discredits you from being a professional. Like, there's no excuse. Audio is so inexpensive to get and to sound great. And so really it depends on your situation again, but you probably will have a lav mic on your guest and maybe a lav mic on you, Or in my case, I've got like, a table standard, like, late night talk show microphone on the desk. And then my guest has a lav mic. And as an added sort of backup, I always have a boom mic just out of frame pointing to us. So in case the audio completely fails, that microphone is recording on a separate backup little recorder that is going to save us in case the audio stops recording. But the key is to have them separate. Like that is a separate recorder from what you're going to be recording the real audio on. So just something to think about. Backups are so important. Proper lighting, of course, doesn't need to be crazy. Lighting is so inexpensive as well. It's LEDs these days are so inexpensive. You have a couple of panels up there. Just make sure that everyone has a nice soft look, and that's achieved by using a softbox or some sort of diffusion on either of the lights so everybody looks well. I talked about the backup recording equipment, and really too, you gotta really think about your sound. Again, going back to sound, you do not want an echoey room. So if you do, if your setup is in a room where there's no carpet, you've really got to bring in some sort of area rug, and then maybe out of frame, some sound paneling, or at the very least, very inexpensive, just moving blankets. Moving blankets are so cheap on Amazon. You can get a pack of them of 8 of them for like nothing. Hang those up all out of frame, and it makes a huge difference in the sound. Moving on, the right environment is huge for your guests. You want to make the environment extremely comfortable for them, because ultimately, if they're comfortable, you're going to get a great interview, which again trickles right down to great content and more viewers and everything like that. So really, your choice of where you interview somebody is really important. Now, some people have it in their living rooms. Some people have their show in their basement. I have mine in my garage. And wherever it is, if you're having an in-person guest, you want to make that experience so great for them and so easy. It should be frictionless for them. There should be no question about, well, where do I go? What do I do? When do I get there? You're going to already have all the information of what time to arrive, what to expect, and how long you're going to be there, all those little details. Make sure things like the room temperature is a nice, comfortable temperature. And generally on the colder side works better because people, if they get nervous, they get hot. So I like to keep it around, I don't know, like 67 degrees, 65 even sometimes. We just don't want people sweating. There's nothing worse than a guest who maybe is nervous and they start to sweat, because you can't fix that in post, right? So make sure it is on the cool side. We'd rather have them be a little chilly than have them, be hot. You want to make sure you have water at the very least. Now, green room, that's a nice to have. If you have a separate area, when they can come sit down, you can talk. That generally is not always the case with us. I think this kind of group of us making these shows really have only one room. So what I like to do, and if you have enough space, is have a dedicated little small area of part of your studio setup. Even if it's in a basement or a bedroom, maybe it's just 2 chairs, and that is the sort of green room. And what you're going to need in there, of course, is any kind of refreshments they want. And I like to ask ahead of time, hey, do you want water? Do you want wine? Do you want a beer? What is it that's going to make them comfortable? And believe it or not, it's not the worst thing in the world if somebody says, hey, can I have a margarita? Because usually that little bit of alcohol just takes the edge off. But at the very least, have water. You're also going to have a mirror. You want to make sure that they get a chance to see themselves before they sit down and we start filming, just because you don't want a case where after the show is over and it's airing or whatever, and they see themselves and do not like the way they look. You want this sort of you want them to sort of sign off on the way they look, which is really important. So a nice, mirror, and that's pretty well lit, is a really good idea. And finally, minimize distractions and interruptions. That comes with where the studio is, where you're filming. Again, are you in a garage? Like I'm in a garage, right? So we had a distraction where the FedEx guy came and he's just knocking on the door. so we had to like cut and we had to, stop the show and do whatever. So those things you really can't avoid, but if at all costs, obviously make sure all phones are off, make sure that, the neighbor next door is not having a huge party at the time, just things like that. You don't want the guests to be distracted. And when they get distracted, they kind of lose their focus and then kind of lose their groove. And you got to get back into that to finish the interview. So something to think about. Oh, one more thing about the environment. Now, see in this picture right here, see this sign? It's kind of hard to see there. So this area, this is the view from where my guest sits. That's their chair there. Here's where I sit. I put this sign here and it says my name. It says the name of the show and you can't see it, but it says my Instagram handle. I want the guest to know to never forget where they are and who they're with. So when they're sitting down there, just over my shoulder, they are reminded, my name is Brian Kelsey. The name of the show is 10 Minutes With, and the Instagram handle is, at 10 Minutes With. Just in case they forget, or just to remind them. It's it makes it very easy for them to continue the conversation because maybe they forget your name. Like people do interviews all the time and they're going from one to another, and you want to make sure that they remember you and your name. So if they forget it, they can just kind of look over your shoulder and say, hey, Brian, let me tell you more about that. That's a really good tip. Okay, some final thoughts here as we wrap this up. Remember that great interviews are about creating genuine human connections. That's why people love watching interviews, that connection and that vulnerability that comes out in these interviews. It's about serving your audience with valuable content. Of course, you want them to walk away with incredible content and insights to things they may have never known before. You want to be continuously learning and improving. You're going to watch your episodes back and show it to other people and get feedback and loop on that and make the next one that much better. It's about keeping it pro. You definitely gotta stay professional. Maintain that pro attitude. After you're done taping and the guests leave, you can be a ding-a-ling. I don't care, but maintain that professionalism throughout the entire process. It's about creating memorable moments, right? So, for you, for the audience, for the guest, for the crew, if you have it, the ultimate goal is you want everybody to walk away feeling like they've learned something, feeling like they've been entertained, and just really, really had a great time. And I had a great time here. I hope you did too. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out.